the moment. And so I always find that to be true of well-being classes and the topics that we do. And for me, I don't know about you guys. You're welcome to put this in the chat. I think I can pull y'all up over here. Let's see. Let's get the chat. Oh goodness, people are calling. So tell me if y'all feel like that this is an unusual kind of like dead week, feels extra busy to you, feels extra um just like extra frenetic. Anyone feel that this week? Extra busy and a bit stressful. Yeah, Melinda, I'm right there with you. Marissa, extra busy. Yes. Seeing lots of like more so than ever before. I've been teaching for 14 years and I feel like more so than ever, it's just been wildly chaotic. Okay, I'm glad I'm not alone. Okay. Selfishly, I asked that because I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. Of course, like maybe that fall semester that we came back in 2020 from having some time off at home, that semester was particularly chaotic, but I can't really remember another one in the 14 years that I've been teaching that have felt like this. And before that, I think a lot of you may know this, but I was an office associate too in the College of Engineering before I went back to nursing school. So I've worked as a staff member and as faculty. So yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, extra busy, extra cold. Well, y'all are in good company because I'm right there with you. And I think one of the things that when we think about healing our nervous system, we have to think about what are all of the inputs. So to me, this image on this slide right here looks a lot like a panic attack feels. And a panic attack can be that you are having a mental mind brain panic attack. It's a psychological panic attack. You also can have a physiological, meaning your body causes you to have a panic attack. And I have had a couple of what I would probably consider panic attacks in my life. I've never shared that publicly because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding around that. And hadn't planned on sharing that with you today, but I think that sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, it can lead to a point of feeling panicked. And I'm the kind of person that I do everything like I follow the rules, I dot the I's, I cross the T's, I double, triple check that I'm not breaking a rule. Like I have that kind of type A, what I call Barney Fife personality, right? I don't hit curbs, like I don't pick up the wrong gas. Pump at the gas station. Like I don't do those kinds of things because I'm super, super conscientious of like, oh, don't make a mistake. And I'm telling you, like in the last week and a half or so, I can't tell you how many curbs I have bumped when I'm like going to park my car or I'm going to back out. And how many times I've like had to double check, like, oh, did I really get the correct, gas pump, like not the diesel? Did I really like double check, triple check this thing? Did I make sure that there weren't any typos? And like feeling very human. I don't know if anyone else is feeling very human this week. Um, but yeah, y'all put a one in the chat if you're feeling very human. And so sometimes though, if we don't catch ourselves, when we start having these curbed moments, like that's what I call them. Yes, we are all in the same club. We're at the right place. Then what can happen is we can get into this level of overwhelm, even if not psychologically or mentally or emotionally, we can get into this place of where our body is overwhelmed. And the next time I update these slides, I'm going to put this cat. Y'all have probably already seen this cat. It's been on the internet for a long time, but it's that really cute, grouchy looking gray cat that looks like his hair or her hair is standing on end. And the cat just looks absolutely fed up with life and like they've been fried. And so when I send that cat to my family, they know, yeah, it's a version of the grumpy cat, Adam. So I don't think it's the grumpy cat, but I think it might be a cousin of the grumpy cat. Because this cat looks more weary than angry. I'm gonna have to add it. Um, so when I feel that way, when I feel like my nervous system is overloaded, I feel like that cat looks. And so I will send that picture to my friends or family or to my close colleagues that I work with. And I'm like, okay. I'm feeling overloaded. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I feel like my nervous system is fried. And what causes that is a number of things, but it's usually that there's too much stimuli coming in. So it's kind of one of those things. Oh, our objectives didn't come. Oh no, it's a glitch. Well, the objective is that we're going to learn how to help our nervous system not be so fried. Um, so when we get that way, we really have to think about how can we calm our nervous system. And it's what really looks like healing the nervous system, but healing the nervous system makes it sound like it's a one and done situation. It makes it sound like, oh, I'm going to go through this process and then I'm going to be healed. I love your version of the cat, Brandy. It's fun. I'm gonna have to steal that one too. That one's good. Um, so what happens then is that you have to really cut your inputs. And so what does that mean? So if I were not teaching this class, I would have my overhead fluorescent lights off because fluorescent lighting is really not great for most people's nervous systems. Now, some people have a higher tolerance for stimuli than others, but fluorescent lighting is really not amazing for our nervous systems. And so I would have my overhead light out if we weren't on this call. And I would have my little twinkle lights that I have above my shelf. I would have those on and just my lamp. And if I needed more light, I'd have my window open, like my window blinds, because that kind of light can be really helpful. Regular sunshine can be overstimulating as well, but it's usually not to the degree that an artificial light is. Having warmer light versus cooler light bulbs, which is what the fluorescent light is, it's very cool, can be helpful if you need to have lamps on. But basically, acting in kind of congruence with how we would normally live our lives before we were kind of, going through this industrial revolution is you eat and you work when it's light outside, and you rest and you relax and you don't eat as much when it's dark outside. So our phones give us a lot of artificial light and stimulation. So not using those a lot can be helpful, especially in the evening close to bed, because you get blue light exposure. Or using like blue light blockers like glasses or screen protectors or settings on your phone can be really helpful. Lighting in your eyes, what goes into your retina, that tells your body a lot about the time of day and what it is that you should be doing. So, getting outside in the morning for 10 minutes before you start your day and getting some sunshine in your eyes, obviously not looking directly at the sunlight, but being outside without sunglasses. Um, you know, Starting your morning in a really relaxed way. It's kind of like why we turn our radios down when we're lost. So I went somewhere new this morning for the first time. And part of the reason why I feel like that cat is because I had to have blood work done because I just started a new medication. And for my adrenal gland, I have some adrenal insufficiency. And so that's a new thing for me. So I had to start a new medication. It's making me feel a little jittery. So I'm blaming that on the curb situation. And I had to go get blood work, and that's not a part of my typical Wednesday. And then I had to go to this new building 55 minutes later because I was trying to multitask. I got a semi-urgent phone call from an organization that I lead that they needed me to talk with them. So I'm trying to navigate a new part of town while on the phone, while trying to listen to my GPS navigation, while trying to avoid potholes. That is like perfect timing for you to get overstimulated, right? That's the curb that I hit very gently, but it got my attention. And so the thing is your nervous system is always giving you signals, and it's using things like chemicals and neurotransmitters to help you communicate between your nerve and your cell and your body. And so when we start having, extra emotions, extra stimuli, extra inputs, then our nervous system can get overwhelmed and it starts misfiring and making us feel anxious and nervous because it's like, wow, this is not working how it should, and you need to pause. And so sometimes life gives you those moments to reflect back to you, almost like a mirror of like, hey, you need a timeout, like Saved by the Bell. I don't know if any of you are 90s fans. Everything good in my life happened in the 90s. Not really, but I love the 90s. And So this is the Zach Morris, timeout, saved by the bell style, where you just want to pause life and you want to be able to get ahead of your stress, I think is really, really helpful. But sometimes it means that you have to hit a couple of curbs or do something that you normally wouldn't do. Maybe it's typos in an email that you would normally catch, or maybe it's missing a deadline or a meeting. Like those attention grabbers that you sometimes have to have in life to be like, oh, wow, like you're really not doing what you would typically do in this situation, or that bothered you more than that normally would bother you. We call that emotional chandeliering, where, if someone comes up behind you and scares you on purpose or unintentionally, and you jump, kind of like a cat. That's called chandeliering because you're jumping toward the chandelier, like you're overstimulated. Well, you could have emotional chandeliering too. And I always gave my students, when I did mental health clinicals, this example. I would say an emotional chandeliering moment is when you go to Starbucks, which I did today. I'm like, I'm going to treat myself. Um, when you go to Starbucks and they get your order wrong and you have an emotional reaction to that, most likely that's a chandeliering moment, because you're like, in the grand scheme of your day and your life, getting the wrong Starbucks order is probably not that bad or that big of a deal and can be pretty easily fixed, or you can just drink the drink that you were given. Not always, but sometimes it's not a huge deal. But if you absolutely like lose it over that, you get really upset or you get really angry or you get really rude about it, it's probably that was just kind of like the cherry on top. Like that was the last straw, so to speak. And so you're not really upset about the wrong Starbucks drink. You're really upset about all of the other things that you were ignoring, right? The curbs, the missed appointments, the lost for literally 55 minutes in my hometown, y'all. Um, I love y'all a lot to tell you my embarrassing moments because I hope that it helps somebody on the call. Um, but you probably shouldn't need GPS in your own hometown, but I do on a regular basis. And like getting snotty because I'm walking out in the cold trying to find this building, and all of these little hiccups and things along the way, you kind of stop and pause and you think, oh my goodness, this is really getting my attention. And for a while, you can kind of, breeze over it, right? You're like, oh, well, everyone makes a mistake. Everyone forgets a meeting. Everyone forgets a deadline. Everyone misses a typo. But when they start to stack together, that's when it can be more difficult to ignore. And it may be telling you something deeper, like you've got some things you need to address, or it may just be that you just need to take a break. It can mean a lot of different things, and we assign the meaning to it. And so I would just invite you to not catastrophize it, but to just kind of think a little deeper about it. Like, is this just that I need a 15-minute break and I'm fine? Or is this that I need to look at my life and think about my commitments and like where I need to make some real changes? And the longer that you delay having that moment with yourself, the more likely it is that you need to have a bigger um, reflection moment, and that you probably are going to need to take bigger action. So there's, from my understanding, I love Japan, and I study a lot about and read a lot about Japan. And from my understanding, there's a Japanese teaching and wisdom tradition that says when you realize that you're on the wrong train, it's easier and cheaper and better to get off the minute that you know that you're on the wrong train. You get off at the next stop. You don't continue on because you're getting further and further off track. And I love that analogy so much, because a lot of times we stay really committed to the wrong decisions that we make, or to the way that we're approaching our life because we feel like we have to, because maybe we're in survival mode, or maybe it's because we've always done this way, or whatever it is. We have a million reasons why we do what we do. Maybe it's just a habit that we've let go on that has really become very stuck. And so we just don't know to do something different. But everyone's level of like their threshold, their sensitivity in their nervous system, their likelihood to have anxiety and burnout and chronic symptoms from stress is all very different. I have 5 children and a spouse. And so there's 7 of us plus a really wild, chaotic dog in our house. And so even just seeing the seven of us and how our personalities are all very different from each other and how we handle similar events very differently, how we code those, how we make, we all make a story about why things are chaotic. Like for all of us that are on this call, oh my goodness, there's 130 people. That's exciting. Um, for the 130 of us that are on this call, if we all hit a curb today, all 130 of us would have something slightly different to say about that curb situation. Like we all would come up with a different story. So one technique in counseling is what is the story that you're telling yourself? So I will tell you this. When I get upset, particularly if it's someone close, like a best friend, a spouse, a parent, a kid, then I will say, and I will do it just like this. I'm going to act it out for you. I'll say, the story that I'm telling myself right now, and I'll put my hand on my chest, the story that I'm telling myself right now is that you don't care or that you don't, and I'll, fill in the blank because we're always telling ourselves stories and we're always making meaning out of the things that happen to us. And so I think that that's really important for us to know. So what is the story we're telling ourselves about why it's so wild and chaotic this week? That will make a difference in how we actually show up and how we actually address the challenges that we're having this week. Um, so if we just think of, oh, well, it's just a season, it's just 1 week or 2 weeks out of the semester, out of the year, nothing unusual is happening. Maybe I'm just extra tired. Maybe I've been sick, which has been true at our house. We've been sick at the Horton house. Maybe I'm just a little more run down this week than typical. That's going to put it in more of a neutral mindset, a neutral reframe, or even a positive reframe versus someone that is more likely to catastrophize it and say, oh my goodness, my life is falling apart. Nothing ever works out for me, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is that we sometimes in our culture really shame people who have a more negative or neutral mindset. We really value people who have a very positive mindset. And the thing about it is that there are some things in our biology, in our histories, in the things that we inherit from our families, culturally in our environment, that are beyond just absolute control. Some of us are more hardwired to like see potential danger. And you know what? Those people are amazing because they're going to see the pothole before you fall into it. You want those kind of people around. The people who are really happy all the time are amazing too, but they're probably looking at the happy things of life and they're not necessarily noticing the potholes. And so you need happy people who are, looking at the amazingness of life and enjoying the sky. But you also need the people who may be a little bit more neutral or what people would consider negative. I say that's realistic sometimes. And who are noticing, yeah, the sky's beautiful, but like you're about to step in that pothole, like watch out. And that's what our nervous system is designed to do. It's designed to hold both, for both to be true, for us to be able to have a really positive outlook on life and also be really grounded in realism. And that helps us stay safe. So some things that you can pay attention to are physical cues and emotional cues. So what I do, and I hope this helps you guys, I make rules for myself and I call them Abby's rules. And I have a list on my notes app. And so one of the things, and I broke that rule today, but one of the things that I tend to try to do is I try not to have phone calls in my car. One, the traffic in Tuscaloosa is just too much for me. And I need to be really concentrating and being what I would call a defensive driver. I need to be watching out for people who are trying to get in my lane or potholes that have newly appeared or, making sure that I'm paying 100% attention to what I'm doing. And so I really try my hardest not to take phone calls, especially important phone calls, while I'm in the car. And so that is a rule that I have. I also have rules about if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. So I'll say, like, if I'm going to go to a holiday party where I know that I might get overstimulated, or that I'm not in complete control of when I'm going to be able to eat, is I'm going to make myself a little snack plate before I go so that I'm not hungry when I get there, right? Because holiday parties never go according to plan. So we had a holiday party at work Monday night, and it was lovely. And I made sure that I followed my rules. So I had a snack plate before I left home. And then that let me show up not overstimulated, not hangry. And I was able to enjoy the people and not really focus on the food aspect as much. I got to enjoy my little cheesecake bites and had a great experience, right? And so I create these rules. And some of it I've created through self reflection, through journaling, through identifying emotional and physical cues, because I would show up to a holiday party, and because I was always a chronic dieter until very, very recently, I would say, oh, well, I can only have these many calories and I can only have this much food. And I had a lot of disordered eating. And so I would say, okay, well, I'm just not going to eat lunch that day so that I could really enjoy the holiday food that's going to be served because I know it's going to be great. And I would have all of this food noise and anxiety around what I was going to eat there. And then I would get there, and inevitably I'd have to wait longer. I'd have to wait in line, and then I would get really shaky and really hungry, and my blood sugar would drop, and I wouldn't enjoy the party. And I bet probably people didn't enjoy me. And the food is just one aspect of why we do what we do. And so and why we celebrate. So I was like, okay, from now on, I'm going to eat beforehand. I have lots of little rules like that. If I'm going to go to an airport, I'm going to be in the airport on Friday morning. I will take my loop earplugs or I will put in my earbuds. And for almost the entire experience of the airport, I will have my earplugs or my earbuds in, listening to music or having silence or doing a meditation while I'm at the airport, because it's just a lot of motion for me. It's a lot of chaos, it's a lot of motion. And I noticed that if I block out things, either because I'm not listening to all of it or because I'm not seeing all of it, my nervous system is not getting as stimulated. So if you find that you're overwhelmed, one reason that deep breathing helps is because often when we take a deep breath, we almost always close our eyes. And so I want y'all to think about that. Do you close your eyes when you take a deep breath? So we're going to pause here. We're going to say, let's take a deep breath in and hold it for 2 to 4 beats, and then exhale for 2 to 4 beats. And I know I close my eyes. So we're going to go inhale. That was 4. And then exhale. Exhaling is usually harder. So you can inhale and hold it longer usually than you can exhale it and hold it. And if you do that for a cycle of 4, so in for 4, out for 4, and you do that 4 times, that's called boxed breathing. And that can really help reset your nervous system. If you get really panicky or overstimulated, running cold water, really cold water, over your wrist can be really helpful. So over this area right here, if you're hot, if you're feeling panicky, if you're having anxiety, run cold water over that area on both wrists, and that will help reset your nervous system. Taking an ice cube and putting it there or on the back of your skull, where your skull and your neck meet, that can also, for like 10 or 15 seconds, don't do it to where it's painful, but that cold can also help. That's why when we were upset as kids, an adult would probably tell us, hey, go wash your face, go splash cold water on your face. Also another way to reset your nervous system. Those are some things to do in the moment. The self-reflection, the mindfulness practices like meditation, yoga, deep breathing, those can be used at any time, but those are good long-term practices to keep your body and your state pretty healthy. Yoga is particularly good at this because you have to really stay in the moment. Another thing is that you can use something like the labyrinth, like walking the labyrinth. There's hand labyrinths that are wood that you can get on Amazon and you can trace the pattern. There's color sheets that you can print. We have a labyrinth at the College of Nursing that you can come and walk that's out behind our building, kind of catty corner to the speech and hearing building, and it has instructions on how you can walk that. It's called a walking meditation. They're really, really popular, and have been in Europe for a long time. And a lot of their gardens, their formal gardens in these governments and these like royal families, they'll have gardens that are shaped like labyrinths because they know that when they need to make a decision, they go out into their formal garden and they walk the labyrinth, and that walking meditation helps them center themselves, helps them make better decisions. Hospitals, churches, Lots of places that, have, grief and difficult moments will have labyrinths for people to walk. Emotional awareness, I think knowing what our emotions are, if you were to ask people to name emotions, there's about 6 common emotions that people will name. Things like anger and sadness and happiness and shame and guilt. There's about 6 that people will usually come up with. And those are the 6, what we call the primary emotions. But there's so many more besides that. Because sometimes when we say that we're angry, we're really we're disappointed, right? Sometimes when we say that we're angry, it's really that we're frustrated or that a need didn't get met. And so being able to name the emotions that you're having beyond just those 6 primary emotions can really help you find out like what it is that your need is that you need to try to meet. So there's an app called How We Feel, and it's a free app on the App Store. It is a black background with a rainbow colored heart, kind of looks like a technicolor heart, and it's called How We Feel. And it gives you AI generated prompts. So you go in, it asks you a prompt, you answer, and based on your answer with like a chat bot AI technology, it will give you more things to do. It might be to upload a picture, it might be to describe the feeling, it might be to take a deep breath, and it lets you track that at any time during the day and come back, and it helps you actually name what I would call the micro emotion. So it might be that your primary emotion is anger, and we all have a primary emotion that we tend to go to, by the way. The micro emotion might be frustration or disappointment. And so that's something to really think about, because being angry feels very different. It can look the same, but it can be very different than being disappointed, right? Anger comes from a different place than disappointment. And so, how you would address that disappointment, what actions you would take would be very different. And that's why knowing your emotional awareness can be helpful. Lifestyle choices, things like the wellness basics that we talk about, eating good, taking care of your mental health, your brain health by taking brain breaks and meditation and breathing. Um, Hydrating well, drinking half your body weight in ounces a day, uh, sleeping well, which is foundational. If you're not sleeping, that is a huge thing for your nervous system. I have not slept well since April. I don't really know what's going on with that. My doctor doesn't know what's going on with that, but I've always been a great sleeper. For all of the health issues I've had, sleeping has never been a challenge for me, but it has lately. And I'm approaching 40, and so they're looking at hormones and all of this stuff. So I'm having to be really intentional about trying to get as much good sleep as I can. But sleep is hard because it's foundational, but yet you feel like you have so little control over it. How we move our body would be the 5th one. So intentional exercise. You want to get about 150 minutes of exercise a week. So it doesn't matter if you're doing 10 minutes here and 15 minutes there or hour-long workouts. It's that you're getting moderate exercise, 150 minutes a week at a minimum, with one active rest day. And that you're in moderate intensity, meaning that you can still have a conversation, but you're a little breathless. It's not super comfortable to have the conversation, but you can. So those are the lifestyle choices, along with things like limiting your phone usage, your computer time, not watching as much TV, connection and community, having something to look forward to. And then educating yourself about your nervous system like you are today. Again, everything is on a spectrum. So you're going to have people who are going to be much more sensitive than others. And I think it's really difficult sometimes if you are sensitive to stimuli. And this is not an emotional sensitivity, which was what we kind of think of when we say someone is sensitive. It's just that their nervous system is really in tune with their environment, and that's a great thing. But if you can't turn the volume down on that sometimes, then you do get overstimulated, right? And so turning the volume down is doing these kinds of practices. And then listening to your body. So, how many times are we taught, and we're taught this in elementary school, how many times are we taught to ignore our body's cues? So, I want y'all to put a 1 in the chat if this is something that you can identify with, where you know that you need to go to the restroom, or you know that you need to go and fill up your water bottle because you're thirsty, or you know that you need to get up and take a break, but you ignore that cue, or you know that you need a snack, but you ignore that cue and you push through until it's more convenient. And then sometimes more convenient time doesn't really come and it's an emergency. Yeah, lots of wins. So what that teaches our bodies to do, and I'm a nurse, so nurses are the worst about this. Um, we will push through and we will go entire shifts, 12-hour shifts without having gone to the restroom or without having eaten more than something, as a snack. And we're asking our bodies to do, pro athlete level work as nurses, and we're not training or recovering or treating our bodies like professional athletes do, right? So just think about our football team. Think about your favorite, sports team beyond Alabama. Think about the things that they do. They train, they do a lot of these mindfulness practices, they eat well, they have nutritionists telling them what they should eat. They are really diligent about their sleep. They have a lot of structure, a lot of discipline about what their daily life looks like. They recover, they rest. They do a lot of reflection. Think about looking at game day footage of like, let's do a debrief of what that game looked like and how we did things. And we do a lot of that same work, right? So I use nurses as an example, but a lot of times we expect pro athlete level work out of our bodies, but we don't do athlete level things for our bodies, right? So we're not doing the rest and recover intentionally, right? We're resting and we're recovering when we have 5 minutes on the weekend or when we get sick, right? Like my family did over Thanksgiving, but it's not intentional, it's not scheduled. Well, athletes schedule that kind of thing. We're not always going and doing an RDN appointment, seeing a registered nutritionist and dietitian. We're not going and getting those appointments and getting feedback on what our macros should look like or what's the best meal plan for us in this season of life for our health needs. We're not always going and getting those appointments, the eye exams, the dental exams, the physical exams. We're not always coming to Wellbama and getting those great services and benefits. And so we have to really think about listening to our body and knowing its cues, because it's kind of like our car. If we keep ignoring the check engine light, eventually that's going to become a much bigger problem. And so we've got to relearn and reteach our body that the minute that it tells me that I need to get up and go to the restroom, regardless of what you're doing, as long as it's not dangerous, most things can wait. Most things aren't emergencies. Now, in nursing, my example doesn't hold true for that because a lot of times we're in emergency situations, but there are things you can do to be able to be your best self. Because if you're trying to take care of a patient and you have a full bladder, that is not ideal for anyone, right? It's a distraction. Your body does get distracted, your nervous system gets overstimulated. And so you have to kind of build in moments where you can take those rest breaks. And you need little micro moments, not, 15, 30 minutes, once a day. You really need micro moments of rest throughout the day. So building in margin, 5 minutes, 3 minutes every hour to do something for your body, to get up and move, to do squats, to go to the restroom, to go get water, to step outside, get some fresh air. You need those kind of micro moments. And then seek professional guidance when you need it. Sometimes we need help figuring out what it is that we need. So so I called someone today and I said, "Look, I've hit another curb. This is my third curb in a week and a half. I need an intervention." And he said, "Well, what intervention do you need?" And I said, "I don't know. Can I just delegate that to you? Can you just get back with me at the end of the day and tell me what you think my intervention should be?" And he was like, "Sure, on it." And so it's one of those things where sometimes you really don't know what the intervention is. You just know that you need a pause. And so that is the intervention in the moment, is just you take a time out and you just say, "You know what? I'm going to parent myself in this moment, and I'm going to put myself in timeout like you would a child, to let them think about their, actions, the experience that you just had with them." That's a frequent, parenting teaching technique. Let's go sit quietly, put ourselves in timeout, and kind of get ourselves back together. So I frequently will put myself in timeout and say, "Okay, I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to stop answering. This is not an emergency crisis call center. I don't have to be available all the time, but I do feel that way. I'm going to stop looking at my email for 15 minutes. I'm going to go and do some of those self-care practices that I named. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to just brain dump a list. So all day today, every time something has come up that I'm like, oh, I really should, or I think, oh, that's a problem. Like the wheels on my chair are not rolling. And that's not a huge problem, but every time I go to move my chair, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this chair does not move. It's not rolling. I need to fix those wheels. And so I put it on my notes app, fix the office chair wheels. And I've done a couple of things, and this is what's the frustrating thing, guys, is like I've done a few things to fix these wheels and they're still not working. So now I'm gonna have to go to like a different level of troubleshooting why these wheels are not working. And so that's where we sometimes can get stuck, where everything is complicated. When we do a lot of delayed actions, then we end up with a very long list of deeper level issues, right? Because we didn't get off the train fast enough. And so if it takes 2 to 5 minutes, I would encourage you to do it the minute that you recognize that it's a problem. If you need to return a phone call, if you need to send a letter, you need to send an email, you need to flag somebody, to come do some work maintenance, whatever it is, if you can do it in the moment, that will really help cut down that mental drain that you have if there's something always buffering in the background of things that you have to do. So, if you have heightened sensitivity, a quick stress response, emotional sensitivity or reactivity, physical symptoms like you're having headaches, GI, digestive, stomach issues, chronic pain, which sometimes chronic pain is what's causing the nervous system dysregulation, not the other way around. So that's important to know. If you have difficulty kind of shutting off, relaxing, if you tend to worry about things, if you have difficulty sleeping, those are all signs that you may be having some nervous system dysregulation. And you just have to start doing a little bit of an archaeological dig and thinking, okay, why am I having this? Have I had this before? Is this seasonal? So, like, maybe it's that it's cold and it's not as sunny. Maybe it's, a reaction to not having as much sunlight or outdoor time. Maybe it's a diagnosis like seasonal affective disorder. It's a whole range, right? And so you've just got to ask yourself these questions. A lot of times, what will be helpful is asking other people who know you well. So I always call, a couple of my friends. Um, I call my husband. I call my mom sometimes. It just depends on what the situation is, but I always like to get feedback from people who see me in multiple aspects of my life because, how I am at home or with my family may be different than how I am with my friends or how I show up for work. And there's different stressors there, different dynamics there. And so I think it's really important to get lots of good information. When you go, for example, to be screened for adult onset ADHD, one of the things that the psychiatrist will do is they ask you a lot of information, but they will say, and now here is an entire manila envelope full of things that we want you to go gather from home and from your life. And they give you multiple questionnaires, multiple different sources of data collection that you have to come and bring back because they want to know, they want to hear from a parent, they want to hear from your spouse or partner, somebody you live with, they want to know from your best friend, they want somebody from work, from all of these different areas in your life. They want to know, like, how are you showing up in those different areas because we're very multidimensional and that will look different across the different roles that we're in. And so I think we can really benefit from doing that ourselves by getting that feedback and saying, like, hey, do you notice if I get like so and so? Like, do you notice that that happens at the end of every semester? Or do you notice that, I do this thing, then, like, have you noticed any patterns about how I'm doing this thing? And a lot of times people will know that about you, but they don't share it. They don't feel comfortable sharing it. They think you already know. An example that I have of this is a few years ago, I was going in and I was getting medication for a sinus infection. And my physician said, do you know that you come in 3 times a year and you have a sinus infection and you get this cocktail of steroids? You get a Z-Pack, you get cough syrup, you get a couple of steroid injections, you get Decadron and Rocephin, and and then I don't see you again. And so she knew that I worked as a faculty member. And I said, well, I mean, now that you mention it, isn't that how all good stories are? Now that you mention it, yeah, I do realize that. And she's like, and do you know that it's always dead week or finals week? It depends on when you come in, but the symptoms come in around dead week and stay through finals week. And I might see you at the beginning of your symptoms, or I might see you at the end of your symptoms, but you always come in that 2 week period and you are just like deathly sick. She's like, no, why do you think that is? And I said, well, I said, I probably could speculate, but I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I said, like, meanwhile, can I get my Decadron and Rocephin shot because that's gonna bring me back to life? And she would just chuckle. But that made me think about, am I running myself so hard that when I'm able to break a little bit at the end of the semester, that's when I get sick? And research says that yes, that is when we get sick at night and on the weekend because we push through the day. And then the minute that we let off the gas pedal, that's when our bodies are like, okay, it's safe to get sick now. She's got a minute. And so that's what was happening to me. So what I would have to do is be really intentional the last couple of weeks leading up to dead week and finals week, as I would have to do things like taking more vitamin C, sleeping 30 minutes extra, avoiding people with the sniffles. I would have to like do all of these little micro things. And a handful of years ago, I realized it had been 3 semesters, 4 semesters since I had had that situation happen again. And so you can make changes, but oftentimes it's someone being willing to ask the question, like, hey, did you notice that you're coming in the same time every semester and this is what's going on? Because I had an awareness of it, but I wasn't really making it mean something. The story I was telling myself about it was just that this just happens and I just deal with it. And this is the cocktail of medications that make me be able to push through. And so I think that's so important to have people in our lives and be willing to be those people for others. So some pros and cons, pros are that usually if you have a sensitive nervous system, you're very aware of your surroundings and of yourself. You have a lot of empathy usually, you're creative, you have a strong sense of intuition, you're very detail oriented. A lot of times after having parented 5 children, the reason that I think that some of my kids aren't sensitive in their nervous systems is that they're completely unaware. And I call that pleasantly unaware. They aren't noticing the details of things that would make them be upset or nervous or anxious or overstimulated. Like their awareness of those things is very minimal. And my kids that do have a lot of awareness are the ones that are more anxious and that have more of the sensitive nervous systems because they're recognizing it in their environment. Just think about if you can't see well and your visual acuity is poor, and you're driving down the road and you don't really notice all of the chaos that's going on in your peripheral vision because you can't see it, you're not going to be overstimulated by that or worried about it because it might hit you blindside, out of nowhere, and then that would be a problem for you. But you're not proactively upset about it because your vision is not even allowing you to see it. That's how I liken it with our nervous systems, and it's very true from a practical sense. If you have great peripheral vision, which I do, unfortunately, then the thing is I can see a lot of chaos that may not be impacting me, but it gets my attention because I can see it. And so you have to really try to put blinders on metaphorically to some of the stimulation. And that could look like wearing a sleep mask on an airplane. It could look like having earbuds in at a football game. You're still going to be able to hear them scream, I promise. It might look like having earbuds in at an airport, like I'm going to have on Friday. It might look like cutting the lights off and taking 5 minutes to do a meditation in the middle of the workday. Better that than burn yourself out, right? It might look like a lot of different things. It might be a gentle walk with some sunglasses on, because, like I said, light can really, it's a healing thing when you're outside, but it also can be a time where you're overstimulated. You know that you're probably overstimulated or have some kind of eye issue if you can't stand to be out in light sunlight early in the day without having sunglasses on. They kind of call me a vampire because you're not going to see me outside without sunglasses on, and they're going to be very dark. Like I have very dark sunglasses because my nervous system is very overstimulated outside, but I do force myself to take them off for at least 10 minutes. So those are some things. Now, of course, the cons of it is that you can get overwhelmed. You can have difficulty setting boundaries. You can have physical symptoms, sensitivity to stress, and emotional intensity. So it's just good to kind of know where you land. And like I said, it's a spectrum. So it's going to shift day to day. And mine definitely shifts depending on what season, what week, how stressed we are, that kind of thing. So the importance of nervous system health is really that you want to have good emotional well-being and emotional regulation. And that can improve, but it has a lot of intentionality behind it. You have to actively work to regulate your emotions because it's easier not to. And our bodies always default to the easiest thing, right? Because the easiest thing is going to be the thing that the body doesn't have to use energy for, and our bodies are trying to keep us alive, not happy. And so, conserving energy, conserving our calorie use, that is the thing it's designed to do, keeping us safe. Our bodies really love us when we have sensitive nervous systems because it's like, yes, this person is trying to keep me safe. So, our cognitive functions, our brain processes information efficiently and makes decisions based on the inputs, but it can get overwhelming when we have so much input that we're kind of digesting. Our physical health, of course, can be impacted. Things like our heart rate, our digestion, our immune response, our quality of sleep, our adaptability. When we have good emotional well being, these things are all working well. But when we don't, then we see problems creep up. So it's important for our overall well-being and physical health and emotions and cognitive function and just our ability in general to understand how our nervous system is playing a role in this. And you've got the autonomic nervous system, and then you've got the parasympathetic nervous system. And they have different functions and they have different ways of kind of regulating these things. And so you've got to really kind of understand that as well. So, are you in rest and digest mode, or are you in flight or fight mode? So things for nutrition, omega-3s are really good. So you can get that in a supplement, but it's always better to try to eat it first and supplement second. So salmon, sardines, chia seeds, walnuts, antioxidants, berries are really great, like a berry shake. Frozen is great when you can't get these things fresh. Oranges, grapes, kale, spinach, broccoli, and different kinds of nuts and seeds. B vitamins like leafy greens, whole grains, vitamin D, so fatty fish, fortified dairy products, sunlight. And vitamin D is one that you almost always have to supplement. Vitamin D is a vitamin, but it also is really involved in hormone synthesis, and it's needed for almost every cell function. And so you really have to have a lot of good vitamin D. And most people are deficient in B, vitamin D, and magnesium. Protein. It's really important that you calculate how much protein you need because it's going to vary depending on your weight, your size, how you metabolize. Um, Sometimes, whether you're male or female, the recommendations are always done based on male female, and that's because of hormones more than anything. And then knowing your iron, so lean meats, poultry, fish, legumes, which everyone can't eat legumes. Some people really are sensitive to that. Zinc would be meat and dairy and nuts and seeds and whole grains. Hydration. So water's key because most of our body is made up of water. And so about 70 to 80%. So if we're dehydrated, you're probably even going to have things like some pain, some mobility issues, some sluggishness, some fatigue because our brains need water and our brains need fat. So if we're going low fat and we're not drinking enough water, we're really starving our brain of what it needs to function well. And that can impact us in the moment, but it impacts us overall for our overall health. So good fats, butter and avocado and lean protein sources, those are good ways to get healthy fat and drinking that water. And then whole foods, minimizing processed and sugary foods. So trying to shop the perimeter of the grocery store. So not the interior aisles, but the outside aisles are really important. And then here are some things that I'll move through quickly. Tapping your heels. So this looks like standing on your tiptoes and letting your heels fall and hit the ground. Now that's not the most important thing to do. It's also not the most comfortable thing to do, but it really can help reset your nervous system. But it might be jarring, so you might not want to start here. But it does work really well. And you see kids do this all the time. Kids kind of inherently know to do it. And then we tell them, stop doing that, stop wiggling. But their wiggling and their movement and they're tapping their heels and they're spinning circles. All of those are common ways that we inherently, innately know how to regulate our nervous systems. But we're told in school or by parents, stop doing that because it's like disruptive or it's rude or, not appropriate. But kids just know to do it. It's just why you see kids hanging off of things, right? Hanging their heads off the bed or spinning circles on the playground. The reason that they do that is because it helps reset the nervous system. But we're big kids that don't do those things anymore. And so we have to pay for apps and do other things because we just don't get back to basics like we need to. So no phones in the bathroom. This is a big one because it really does impact your focus. And some people end up actually not being able to go to the restroom without having their phone because it's become such a tied in kind of distractor. And so I know that sounds wild, but it's really true. There's research that shows that. So limiting bringing phones into the bathroom. Now, here's my thing. Sometimes you need to bring a phone into the bathroom, especially if you're someone who has mobility issues or health issues or things like that. For some safety reasons, you might want to take a phone because what if you're having an episode or you fall or something like that? Having a phone can be good, but not having it where you're actually scrolling it, using it. Progressive muscle relaxation. You can do this by engaging one muscle group at a time from head to toe. I think this is easier to have it done as a meditation. So you can put in progressive muscle relaxation meditation and you'll have someone tell you what to tense and what to relax. I think that's really helpful. Having an anchoring thought. So one that I like a lot is by Marie Forleo that says, I don't do overwhelm. She also says everything is figure outable. And so having something like that is really helpful when you feel like everything is falling apart. So many people are like, the wheels are falling off the vehicle today. And I'm like, yes, I think so too. That is funny, but having an anchoring thought like, but it's figure outable is really helpful to say to others, but also as kind of a pep talk to yourself. Cold showers. So ending the last 30 to 60 seconds of your shower can be really helpful. Chris Hemsworth talks about this a lot in his longevity um, series that he has done over the last few years about lifespan. And so he takes cold showers and recommends them, but it does help with your nervous system regulation. And listening to brown noise is also really good. You can Google that, and they have channels for that on Spotify and on Apple Music. And cutting your caffeine. So caffeine really can lead to anxiety and sleep disruption. And I think that's one of the things that I'm going to have to really wean off of the caffeine. I started drinking coffee again after my surgery a couple of years ago. And I've noticed that I think that is probably more of my issue lately. I know, Patrick, that probably is about the caffeine. I know, I'm so sorry to tell you all that. Um, so dopamine is really critical too. So ways to increase dopamine. This is a neurotransmitter. Dimming the lights after sundown, exposing your eyes to sunlight first thing in the morning, eating tyrosine-rich foods, ingesting more limited caffeine. Caffeine can still be helpful, but some people are extra sensitive to it. Avoiding melatonin supplements like as a regular thing that you use because that can disrupt your natural hormones and all of the good things that we need our bodies to do on their own. Using the belief effect smartly, so like having something like an anchoring thought can be helpful to get you back on track. Learning to associate winning with the effort that you put in. So not the outcome, but the effort is really important because a lot of times, like I told my husband when I called him this morning, I was like, the effort I'm putting in is not equaling the output. And I don't like that. I've never liked math, but I really don't like that kind of math. And him laughing at me was kind of therapeutic today. Sometimes it's not, but today it was. I let him laugh at me. But sometimes we do just need someone to find the humor in it when we can't. And I'm not always going to find the humor in it immediately. It's going to be a little bit before I get to laugh about it. Um, and then maintaining good nervous system health is really about all of those lifestyle factors. It's the puzzle pieces. So I'll kind of end with this analogy and just say, it's kind of like making cookies. I made cookies this weekend and they did not turn out right. And the thing is that the ingredients didn't change. So I had all of the quote unquote right ingredients, but I don't know if my oven is just getting old. I don't know if the cookies just needed more love. That's what they say at Hokkaido. The reason their food tastes good is because they cook it with love. And I think that's true. You've got to love that you're cooking the food or the food feels it. I don't know if the cookies didn't get enough love and attention before they went in the oven. I don't know if it was too humid outside or that's too cold, but the cookies just did not turn out right. They didn't rise. They were really hard. And sometimes when we're needing help with our health, it feels like we're trying to make the same recipe we've always made with the same ingredients that we've always used, but yet it like the cookie isn't coming together like it used to. And that can be so frustrating. So looking at resources like the Headspace or Calm App or Insight Timer and some of these others that are listed here, I think is what's really, really helpful because sometimes you need help seeing that the recipe really didn't change, but maybe the environment is different. Maybe you need different ingredients. Maybe you need to like do something to yourself or the environment that's going to actually change it versus like you're just frustrated about the recipe isn't recipeing like it always has. So I think that that's really helpful too. Of course, there's other wellness and work life webinars that I and others on campus offer. I'll always like to give those kinds of suggestions of like, maybe you need to learn something. Often, though, the people who have sensitive nervous systems already are on information overload. And so you probably actually need less information coming in, even learning, reading. Sometimes you need to even stop consuming that kind of information and just let your brain and body have a break. And so that would be my example for you, like moving into winter break. Do a little bit of kind of a 15 to like 30-minute kind of pause on, okay, moving in 2026, what do I want to leave in 2025? And what do I want to take moving forward? Because I think that's really helpful. And there's a lot that I don't want to take into 2026, but there's a lot of good stuff that I do. And so, but only you can decide that. And what I would have said last year that I wanted to leave behind and take forward is very different than what I would say this year. And that's completely normal. We're in a different season of life. So I hope that's helpful to you guys. Yeah, mind space is really good. The body keeps the score is a